Welcome. I am Dr. Mireia Gurianc, Associate Professor from University of Ljubljana, Slovenia, Faculty of Natural Sciences and Engineering. My research is connected to green processes in textile engineering, such as plasma technology, dyeing and printing with ecologically friendly dyes, and green synthesis of nanoparticles. For the CleanTex course, I have prepared Unit 6.2, Sustainable Pretreatment, Dyeing and Printing. Within the unit, you're going to learn about waterless pretreatments, sustainable pretreatments, water-free and water-low dyeing, dyeing with sustainable dyes, and digital printing. Waterless pretreatments. Textiles need to be properly prepared in order to absorb dyes or finishing agents. The conventional wet pretreatments depend on excessive use of water and also toxic and harmful chemicals. The purpose of waterless pretreatments is preparation of textiles before dyeing, printing, and/or finishing, while eliminating the use of water and chemicals. This can be performed by using plasma treatment, UV and gamma radiation, and laser technology. All mentioned methods, when properly performed, enable treatments of textiles on their outermost surface layer without influencing the bulk. Plasma is a fourth state of matter or partially ionized gas which is produced from electrical discharge under atmospheric or low pressure. The particles of ionized gas collide with the textile surface, and depending on the processing gas and treatment time, different effects can be achieved. In Figure 2, most common surface effects on the textiles are presented. Activation, or sometimes called functionalization of the textile, is achieved when we use non-polymerization gas for producing plasma, such as oxygen, air, nitrogen, or ammonia, and short treatment times. Longer treatment times with plasma leads to surface etching effect, which means that the textile gains micro to nano rough surface. As long as the treatment times are somewhat short, both effects, such as activation and etching, can be achieved. Plasma technology also enables polymerization of different films on the surface of textile. This process has to be performed with polymerization gas or introduction of monomers in vapor phase, which leads to formation of thin and uniform film on the surface of textiles. Here are some examples of plasma pretreatments of textiles and how effective is as waterless pretreatment. In Figures 3 and 4, untreated and plasma-treated cotton and polyester fabrics are shown. The untreated raw cotton fabric is hydrophobic due to the presence of wax and starch on the fibers, and polyester is hydrophobic due to high crystallinity and lack of free polar functional groups. Treating both substrates with oxygen plasma for only 10 seconds activates their surface with oxygen-rich groups, which enables hydrophilic character of cotton and polyester. The activation of textiles leads to increased dyeability. However, the increased dyeability of textiles does not depend only on increased hydrophilicity, but also on the right functional groups on the substrate. Cellulose contains high amount of hydroxyl functional groups, which give cotton the negative charge when it's immersed in water. Treating cotton with oxygen plasma increases the negative potential and therefore increases the repulsion of negatively charged dye molecules. From the results in Figure 5, it's clear that oxygen-rich surface of cotton decreases the absorption of curcumin dye and that absorption of dye is higher on a nitrogen-rich surface. Similar results were found for polyester and application of UV-responsive microcapsules. It was found that polyester was functionalized with higher concentration of nitrogen-rich groups if it was previously treated with oxygen plasma, which enabled higher absorption of microcapsules and UV responsiveness of polyester. Using plasma pretreatment enables higher absorption of molecules of dyes or nanoparticles, which enables higher functionality of textile surface as shown in figures 7 and 8. In case of dyeing cotton with green tea, longer ammonia plasma treatment increases the absorption of green tea due to the higher concentration of nitrogen-rich groups, which in the end enables excellent protection against UV radiation. Protection against UV radiation is also increased when cotton is treated with tetrafluoromethane plasma and zinc oxide nanoparticles. Using tetrafluoromethane as plasma-forming gas causes the etching effect of the cotton surface, increasing the roughness of fibers and interlocking of nanoparticles on the fiber. Textiles can be modified also using UV radiation method. Ultraviolet radiation is an electromagnetic radiation with a wavelength from 400 to 100 nanometers. In order for UV radiation to have some effect on the textile material, the textile surface must be able to absorb UV radiation directly due to the presence of UV absorbing species or through previously applied photoinitiator to produce large numbers of highly reactive free radicals when the textile surface is exposed to UV radiation. In order to have a sustainable process, the photoinitiator has to be odor-free, non-toxic, inexpensive, and easily removable by washing with water. The surface modification with UV radiation is known as photosynthesis oxidation process. We have to be careful when choosing UV radiation as pretreatment, as it cannot be used with textiles sensitive to UV degradation. However, UV treatment is more applicable in the finishing process. Examples are occurring after printing and production of fiber-reinforced composites. Gamma radiation is an electromagnetic penetrative ionizing radiation produced during the radioactive decay of the atomic nucleus. Treatment of textiles results in bond breaking, the effects being formation of excited states, short-lived radicals, and formation of new bonds. In industry, gamma radiation is used for sterilization and DNA alternation in plants, and in research for modification of material properties. The limitations of using such technology are predominantly in the safety and consequently very high price of the method. Gamma irradiation can be very harmful to humans unless it's properly controlled. Also, the control of radioactive material is necessary, weekly testing and equipment maintenance, and workplace and individual workers monitoring. Otherwise, the gamma irradiated textiles are more absorptive, for example, for dyes, as presented in figure 10. Gamma pretreatment also enhances linkage between textile and different coatings, for instance, nanoparticle or special finishing coatings. Use of laser enables several possibilities to be used in textile industry. It can be used as pretreatment for modification of chemical properties of textiles, or in post-treatment for cutting, engraving, and applying fading effects. Word laser is an abbreviation, and it comes from light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation. Lasers are optical devices that are developed to obtain very strong, coherent, and single-color light. In textile industry and research, the most common laser used is carbon dioxide with wavelengths of 10.6 micrometers. As mentioned, laser can be used to modify the surface of textile to increase the dyeability or to change the surface morphology. In figure 13, we can see that generally increasing the laser intensity, the color yield of dyed polyamide increases. Treating textiles with laser also decreases the peeling tendency of knitwear. With the modification of surface morphology, as shown in figure 15, the wettability of polylactide fabric also changes from hydrophobic to hydrophilic and again to hydrophobic. Sustainable pretreatments. The purpose of sustainable wet pretreatments is to prepare textiles for dyeing, printing, and finishing using non-toxic and ecologically friendly chemicals such as enzymes, chitosan, cationic agent, and biomordants. Enzymes are chemically complex 3D proteins of high molecular weight. They are biocatalysts which can speed up the chemical processes. They are relatively fragile substances susceptible to degradation due to high temperature, ionizing radiation, light, acids, alkalis, and biological factors. Commercially, enzymes are obtained from animal tissue, plants, and microbes. They are biodegradable and eco-friendly. Here are shown two models of enzyme mechanism. One is called lock and key, and the other induced feed. The lock and key model is an early theory on enzyme action mechanism. We have enzyme and substrate, which have specific shape to fit exactly into another. Induced fit model is a modern theory on mechanism of enzyme action, where enzymes are regarded as flexible structures and active site can change the shape to fit with substrate. Enzymes are classified and named according to the chemical reaction they catalyze. In Table 1, the names of enzymes that can be used in textile pretreatment are listed according to the process, and also which classical chemistry, such as alkalis, acids, oxidizing agents, bleach, and chlorine-based products they can replace. Otherwise, enzymes are also used in post-treatment for biopolishing and biostoning. Chitosan is a natural source of polysaccharide predominantly produced from the waste products of the crabbing and shrimp industry, but can also be produced from the fungal source. The unique natural characteristics of chitosan include its cationic, biocompatible, biodegradable, non-toxic, non-immunogenic, and antimicrobial properties. Application of Hitosan as a pretreatment is performed mostly to achieve higher adsorption of dyes on textiles. Hitosan cationic nature forms positive sites on textiles, and consequently the anionic dyes bind easier to the textile. As shown in figures 19 and 20, the color yield is greatly increased on pretreated textiles. Hitosan can be used to increase the ability of both natural and synthetic textile materials. The cationization of textiles can be also performed using sustainable synthetic cationic agents. In Table 2, two most common agents used for textile pretreatment are presented. The cationization of textile surface enables electrostatic attraction between textile and negatively charged dye molecules. Using cationic agents in pretreatment eliminates the need for electrolytes in the cotton dyeing process and increasing the dye exhaustion and color yield of the fabric. And the difference between untreated and cationized dyed cotton is very noticeable, as shown in figures 21 and 22. We can use cationization process for dyeing with synthetic or natural dyes. In natural dyeing, most common pretreatment is mordanting, which is performed with the aim to achieve higher dye adsorption, to change the hue of dyed textile, and to increase the fixation rate of natural dyes on textiles. The most common mordants are the metal mordants. In Table 3, environmentally acceptable metal mordants are listed. Instead of using those, we can choose to use biomordants that are derivatives from bio-wastes, biomaterials, and different byproducts. Biomordants are tannin, produced from tree bark or leaves and galls. Cream tartar is produced from byproduct of fermenting grapes into wine. Hitosan is also regarded as biomordant, and we can also use soy milk from soya bean seed waste. Water-free and water-low dyeing. In dyeing of textile, usually large quantities of water are used. To reduce water pollution, to reduce or even eliminate the use of water for dyeing, different water-free and water-low dyeing methods are available, such as dyeing in carbon dioxide, foam dyeing, and spun dyeing. Dyeing in carbon dioxide instead of water eliminates the use of water as well as processing chemicals. The temperature of the vessel with the dyed fabric is reduced, and as a result, the carbon dioxide leaves the vessel in the form of gas. 95% of this released gas is recovered and stored in the form of liquid for further use. For now, only polyester fabrics can be dyed using this method. Instead of using water as dyeing medium, foam can be used instead. Foam is a gas dispersed in a liquid. In foam dyeing, the foam is formed from aqueous solution of dye, foaming agent, and carrier for dye. And the fabric is padded with foam and treated at high temperature to enable fixation of dye onto textiles. Another waterless dyeing method is spun dyeing, where coloration of the fibers is performed during the spinning of man-made fibers. Other names for spun dyeing are mass dyeing, dope dyeing, gel dyeing, and solution dyeing. There are some differences in the performed dyeing methods, but the principle is the same. Fibers are dyed during the production of fibers. Pigments or insoluble dyes are introduced into the melt or spinning solution prior to extrusion. Instead of white, the colored filaments are produced. This technique is mainly used for coloration of very hydrophobic fibers, such as polypropylene. Spun dyeing significantly reduces water use. In the dyeing process, it reduces energy use and greenhouse gas emissions, and vastly reduces the amount of dye stuff and the fixing agents required. Colors of textile are also more durable to washing and UV fading. In a solution spinning dyeing or gel dyeing, after the polymer solution is spun and coagulated to form gel fibers, which are dyed in water dye bath at low volume, and then dried and shaped by heat to form colored fibers of high crystallinity, dyeing with sustainable dyes. In order to have a sustainable dyeing process, we can also use sustainable dyes, either of natural source or synthetic. Not all natural dyes follow the sustainable path. One of those is indigo, which requires a lot of farmland, use of pesticides and herbicides, and also water. In the dyeing process, the same chemicals are used as when dyeing with synthetic indigo dye. The reducing agent and its derivatives are the major pollutants of textile industry and subsequently have hazardous influences on public health. Therefore, when we choose the natural dye, we have to take into account all aspects, from which source is the dye derivative, what is the impact of the source on the environment and health, and how is dye applied onto textiles. Sustainable synthetic dyes are produced by dye producers and controlled by standards Ecotex 100, GOTS, and other ecological standards about regulated substances. The origin of natural dyes are cultivated plants, such as indigo, madder, and sappan, or cultivated animals such as cochineal bug. Dyes can be obtained from food waste plants, alien invasive plants, and other sources such as acorns. Although majority of mentioned sources of dyes are sustainable, in recent years, the research on using food waste plant material and invasive alien plant species as a source of dyes has grown, since it's considered very sustainable and eco-friendly. Both of the plant material sources are regarded as bio-waste. Using different parts of those plant materials, different colors can be obtained. The use of plant waste for production of dyes is one of the Achroma Group's goals. Among classical synthetic dyes, they also produce dyes synthesized from plant waste of food and herbal industry. At Huntsman, sustainable parachloroaniline-free reactive dyes for cellulosic textiles and their blends have been developed. These reduce consumption of water, energy, and time. And when we mentioned indigo, the cleanest and most sustainable and eco-awarded indigo dye on the market is produced by Dystar. Digital printing. Textiles can be colored using digital printing method, where besides colors, detailed patterns, tonal transitions, and graphically complex designs can be incorporated onto fabric. Digital printing is a specialized form of roll-to-roll wide format inkjet printing, which was developed as a sampling method. Digital printing reduces the water and energy consumption, waste, and water pollution associated with traditional textile printing. Evolution and development of digital printing contributed to the creation of two main types of digital textile printers. The major difference between a single-pass and multi-pass printer is in the way ink is distributed onto the fabric. In multi-pass printers, the print heads are mounted to the carriage that moves from left to right and right to left over the white of the fabric. After moving along the whole substrate white, the fabric is moved forward with half the carriage depth to pass printing, or a quarter of that for pass printing, and starts printing another horizontal bar, but this time they move from right to left. Multi-pass printers are also named scanning printer. In single-pass printers, the carriage is not moving at all. The print heads are mounted over the full white of the fabric on a fixed print bar, one for each color. The fabric moves under those bars with a constant speed, so the image is built up in one stroke of one vertical image bar over the full white. These are very expensive, bulk, and not flexible types of printers, but are capable of producing up to 40 meters per minute of printed fabric. Before printing, fabrics must be cleaned and pre-treated. The pre-treatments help fix the dye and the ink to the fibers, control of the speed of ink droplets, optimize the intensity of the colors, and support ink absorption for faster dry times. After the fabric absorbs the ink, it must be dried and/or coated to keep the inks from rubbing or washing off. Some printed fabrics must be washed to remove any residues from the ink. Different combinations of inks, pre-treatments, and fixation processes are used with different types of synthetic and natural fabrics. Direct disperse inks are used for printing directly onto polyester and polyester blends. These inks actually dye the fibers of the fabric and become part of the textile. A post-print heat process is required. Acid dyes are used on pre-treated nylon and silk fabrics. The printed textiles then must be steamed to set the inks and washed to remove any residue. Post-print heat processing is used to permanently set the dye. Reactive inks for linen, rayon, nylon create a chemical bond with cellulose fibers in these fabrics. The printed textiles must be steamed to fix the inks and washed to remove any residues. Textile pigment inks include binders that enable the pigments to adhere to the surface of cotton and other natural fabrics. A rotary heat colander is used to fix the pigments to the fabric. Advances in pigment inks are enabling apparel manufacturers to skip the post-print steaming and washing processes to reduce water and energy consumption.